The key to ridiculous cardiorespiratory performance, which for me a couple of weeks ago, for example, was a 4K with a 4:30 pace, which for a friend of mine is not even his marathon pace, because the marathon pace is like 4:20 on average. But for me, this is peak. So to get something like this, and this obviously is also what I need to search for, because if I don't train in the peaks, then often I run, for example, with an 8-minute pace, which is then so ridiculous that basically then working out is wasting my time. Running, in this case, is just so much more efficient. If I run in my ultradian peak, it's like I'm twice as fast. That's so ridiculous. It's ridiculous how ridiculous it is. Now, for running specifically, it seems to be the case that the following works. Running is a sport that really is constrained by the power to weight ratio. Climbing is 2, but cycling, for example, is less. And strength training only is if one also pulls up the body. But of course, the more weight one pulls with a somewhat constant body weight, the less constrained by body weight eventually the exercise like weighted pull-ups also gets. But of course now, if I compare pull-ups weighted with my morning weight, which for me is currently around 81 kilograms, compared to, well, my P3 weight, which probably is then something like 85, 86 kilograms, then, well, I have to pull the 5 additional kilograms. Maybe it's also 84, I don't know. I rarely measure how heavy I am at the end of the day, because mostly it's irrelevant, because it's not a standardized measurement. It only would be relevant if I then wanted to calculate something like how many kilograms I'm actually pulling when I'm doing weighted pull-ups. But today I trained in P1, strength training in P1, which was riding 17 kilometers to the gym with the bike. So my cardiorespiratory workout was kind of done. Then I recently tried to then straight go into the workout, but this does not work. I need at least 20 minutes of catching the ultradian low. If I try to train in the ultradian low, even if I try to push myself out of this low, it simply doesn't work. If I try to push myself out of the ultradian low, if I try to stay awake or stay active in the ultradian low, then I enter what I call limbo. Now, while I actually use limbo for a much more deteriorated state of mind, which is basically a state in which I cannot, with my own willpower, pull myself out of the situation again, like watching Netflix, then I'm effectively trapped. My mind is too weak to pull myself out of the situation because I'm simply underpowered. This for me is usually P2 or P3, or if I am in an ultradian low and I have eaten but not worked out. The metabolic stress from food then becomes so demanding